in San Francisco in 1975. He said, "I will never die. I will live forever in my books." Okay? Here comes the Ferns record. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Okay. The whole world is watching. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, when Prabhupada came to San Francisco in 1974, he said, "I will never die. I will live forever in my books." And many people have this very personal, intimate experience of Prabhupada, even now, taking up his books and reading them, with a nice attitude. And wow, Prabhupada's there, very accessible. So, Upadeshamrita. How many people have a copy of this? Very nice book. Probably available in the gift store. Yeah. And it's because our whole movement is coming down. We're a very long tradition, full of potency, all the way back to Krishna. And so about 500 years ago, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on the altar on the left there, appeared in this line coming from Krishna and was presenting proper explanation of Krishna consciousness, of the Bhagavad Gita, of Krishna's ideas, and in terms of the time, place, and circumstance. And of course, we understand he's actually Krishna himself, come as Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And among his chief disciples was Rupa Goswami. So on the altar, somewhere here, we have the picture of 6 Goswamis. It's out on the wall behind us there also. Rupa, Sanatan, and these are very, very powerful, intelligent personalities. Rupa and Sanatan Goswami were actually the prime ministers of Nawab Hussain Shah in Bengal. And that time he was ruling, I guess, all of Bengal. Bengal is like, size of something. big state in India. And rich in spices, jewels, silk, medical knowledge, all these things, architecture. There's probably no place in the world now as opulent as Bengal was at that time. So the prime minister for all of this was Rupa and his brother Sanatan, but they renounced everything to follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and adopt his philosophy, his culture, his process of ecstatic congregational chanting of the glories of the Lord in the mood of the gopis. Okay. And then he also wrote so many books, beautiful books explaining all this, and song books and called it acrostics, little puzzles, word puzzles, and so many things, so many ways. So he summarized everything he knew in 11 verses. Here it is, right here in front of you. Upadesh Amrita, the essence of all advice. Like that. And Prabhupada says this constitutes first instructions for neophyte devotees. So it's a very, very nice place to start in terms of a systematic study. Because even in 100 years, we can't really study all the literature that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami gave us, coming down from this tradition. So you have to find your place. So this book was very, very excellent instructions. So in 11 verses, Rupa Goswami goes through what is reality on up to the highest level. He starts off with Vacho Vegam, Manasa Karoda Vegam, Jiva Vegam. He starts off talking about controlling the tongue, right? In the Southwest Airlines magazine, one of the biggest airlines in the United States, they have a passenger's magazine. And it says, the average man speaks 2,000 words a day, right? The average woman speaks... 7,000. Yeah. But if you're talking about Krishna, you're way ahead of the guys then. Yeah. So everybody, even frogs probably says want to talk. There's so many nerves. My background's in psychology. There's so much innervation in the mouth and the fingers like that. And so if you're a human being, so if you're talking this, your whole body becomes stimulated and you have the kind of bhava, feeling you want. So always hearing, singing like that. So the tongue, even in the Bible it says, if you meet a man who has controlled his tongue, you have met a perfected man. So 2 functions, talking and Tasting, yeah, and it all starts there. You're fasting for your health or whatever, and you go by some coffee shop and you're smelling coffee, and of course you're blowing out the smell of fresh pastries. Your water starts to flow in your mouth, and like that. You say, well, I'll just go in and look, but I won't taste it. You say, take it easy. You start tasting a little bit of that, a little bit of coffee, and a little bit, and what do you know? Vacho Begum, Jiva Begum. Your stomach starts to become agitated then, and you want to satisfy your stomach in different ways, okay? And then, upasta. Every Italian knows when you have too much pasta, wine, yeah. So this is a universal fact. This is a universal truth. That's a Hare Krishna thing. You'll find it everywhere. That first you lose control of your tongue, then you lose control of your stomach, then you lose control of your genitals, and you go to hell. It's just like, I've seen that. It's just straight down there. So how to keep the tongue under control? By offering all your victuals, that a word in Australia? Victuals, it's an American cowboy word. All your food, whatever comestibles you have before, cook them with the idea that I'm going to offer this to God, and then I'm going to also take it as His crumbs from His plates, crumbs from the Lord's plate. With that attitude, we have some higher consciousness then. I'm not just eating for a gross reason. One Englishman, he sees 3 people doing the same thing. And he goes to the first guy and he says, what are you doing? And the guy says, can't you see, you damn fool? I'm laying bricks. It's okay, thank you. It's good. He goes to the second guy and he says, well, what are you doing? We're all doing the same thing. And he says, oh, I'm making money. Just take care of my family. Okay, thank you. And he goes to the third person. He says, what are you doing? And he says, oh, it's very interesting. We're building this church now. And today we're putting up the wall, that goes behind the altar. And in a few days, the marble masons will come and hang the marble here, very beautiful marble. And my children are very small now. But when they're bigger, I'm going to bring them here and show them how I helped to build this great cathedral. Right? So I'm doing the same thing. But how broad is the consciousness? How broad is the consciousness? So this is our point, is that we're caught in this lower consciousness. By the tongue can take us down, or the tongue can also take us up. Simply tasting the food offered to Krishna. And right away, Prabhupada said one time in his mother's kitchen, everything was so clean. While she was cleaning, she was cooking, she was cleaning. And so when the offering went on the altar for Krishna, everything was clean. There's a couple seconds. It wasn't that Janmashtami, there's wet rags hanging out of the sink and there's stuff here and everything else. Big offering, the offering goes into the altar, and the kitchen looks like World War III or something, Normandy invasion or something, Save Private Ryan or something. Because the consciousness is what you're eating. The consciousness is there so much. So if the Prabhupada says, if you eat prasadam prepared in the kitchen like that, immediately you feel refreshed, energized, and so on. Okay, so cooking with a high consciousness, I'm offering this to the Supreme Lord. Learn who He is, learn more about Him, and then your consciousness will be higher. And then the second thing, tasting and talking. Okay, always hearing and chanting about God, about Krishna, about some elevated subject matter. Okay, elevated subject matter. And then if you're always talking about Krishna and always tasting Krishna Prasad, your whole life is basically perfect. You've met a perfected person. But it's a whole science. If chemistry is a science, if physics are sciences, what to speak of theology? Well, why is it such a mess? Because it's so difficult. It's so difficult to actually do it properly. So on. So Rupa Goswami, he gives us this very wonderful essence of all advice. It takes 3 minutes. We did a program at Oxford one time, and we had a poster of Rupa Goswami looking, kind of black and white mystical posters. They're sitting like that, And it said, 3 minutes with a genius. Of course, people are walking by in Oxford. What is that? I'm the only genius. 3 minutes with a genius. And we said, Rupa Goswami and his followers dominated the world of 15th century Bengali metaphysics. He was a great prime minister, left everything to follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and lived like a hermit and saint. But he summarized all of his knowledge, thousands of verses. He summarized them in 11 verses. come tonight and spend 3 minutes with a genius. Okay, it was pretty, people came. But they were ready to debate, who a genius was. So very, very nice book. He starts off with a very simple process of we have to control our senses, which Socrates says, Confucius says, Lao Tzu says, Muhammad says, Shakespeare says, Cervantes says, okay. Everybody says, you got to control your senses, otherwise you're going to get in trouble. Okay? Yeah. So then after that he goes through different higher and higher processes in Bhakti Yoga very quickly. The heart of all of our literature is the Bhagavad Purana. It's back in the bookcase there. Of course, it's thousands of years old. It's actually eternal. And it's composed of 18,000 verses, right? So here we have the whole thing condensed into 11 verses. So you got to figure it's going to go pretty fast. Yeah? But it's an overview. It's an overview. You can find out where you're at. Because everybody's at a different level of spiritual development. We're carrying on this for several lifetimes like that. So there's one verse in here in the purports. And the commentaries are incredible. These are coming down from Rupa Goswami, explaining the verses a little bit more. And so it's a very, very nice book. It's actually very important, essential to our movement like that. So in text number 3, he's talking about enthusiasm, and the Acharyas, Prabhupada in the purport, quote, Bhagavad Gita 9:4. It's the essential verse from Bhagavad Gita. So please repeat. Maya, tatam, idam, sarvam, maya tatam idam sarvam, maya tatam idam sarvam, jagat, avyakta, murtina, Jagat avyakta mortina. Jagat avyakta mortina. Maya tatam idam sarvam. Jagat avyakta mortina. Matstani. Sarvabhutani. Matstani sarvabhutani. Nachaham. Teshu. Avastitaha. Nachaham. Teshvavastitaha. Maya tatam idam sarvam. Jagata vyakta murtena. Matstani sarvabhutani. Nachaham teshvavastitaha. So if somebody asks you if you know Sanskrit, you can say a little bit. Or else you can also say, I have a practical knowledge of it. Yeah. Many, many big technical Sanskritist experts don't have a practical knowledge of it. So it seems like we're falling back here. Yeah. Okay, so Krishna says, by me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Yeah? By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Okay. Under the direction, Prabhupada says, of the bona fide spiritual master, one has to make everything favorable for Krishna's service. For example, at present we are using a dictaphone, Prabhupada says. The materialist who invented this machine intended it for businessmen or writers of mundane fiction. Subject matters. He certainly never thought of using the dictaphone in God's service. But we are using this dictaphone to write Krishna conscious literature. So this is the very, very essential verse, right? We have to be able to take everything in this world and see how it's connected to Krishna. And then we are enthusiastic. And everything can be connected to Krishna. Tobacco, can it be connected to Krishna? Huh?
Indirectly.
Directly.
Directly.
Yes, it's a very, very good herb for bruises. Yeah, traditionally people would chew on it and put on a bruise. It would suck all the contamination out like that. But God never expected you to just smoke this stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. In the world, there are so many nuclear rockets, right? Yeah. How can we use those in Krishna's service? I have an idea. You have an idea? Okay, on Janmashtami, there's a big competition between Russia and everybody else to shoot their rockets off in outer space and spell off Jai Shri Krishna. Anybody watch like that? Yeah. And that's the end of all the rockets in a very good way, like that. It'd be a very beautiful light show, a show like that, you know. So one final big fireworks show, okay. And everybody says, we don't need these things anymore, you know. Higher level of consciousness. So everything can be connected to Krishna's service because everything comes from Krishna. And everything is meant for His pleasure, His satisfaction. You know? So the point then is to wake people up to this, you know. Wake people up to their real nature, their real self, their real satisfaction, their real service. Because again, in the material world, we're trying to serve our tongue, we're trying to serve our bellies, we're trying to have a wife or a husband so we can increase the service to our tongue and belly. So many things, a nation, a community, you know. But Krishna is a real enjoyer. So how to connect all these things up, how to communicate this. And so tonight, I think our lecture has been advertised as?
Carl Jung, Encounter with Eastern Mysticism.
Okay, yeah. Encounter of Carl Jung with Eastern Mysticism. How many people here know who Carl Jung is? Raise your hand. A few. Okay. He's a very, very powerful person in the history of Western psychology. He was associate of Freud, although then he had very serious disagreements about fundamental principles of ideology that Freud was developing. So Prabhupada, when he came to the West, he was trying different projects to try and connect different people to Krishna. He had prasadam. With prasadam, you can connect dogs to Krishna. You can connect cats to Krishna through prasadam. So many people, bacteria, like that. And different things, you know, from very beautiful aesthetic things, dresses and all these kind of things. The gift store in Los Angeles is popular even with Hollywood movie stars come there because they have high-class musical instruments, ornaments for the house, beautiful clothes, dresses, saris. And so many people come, they buy stuff there. Then they go to Govinda's restaurant, you know. Then after that, after a few times, they begin to ask about the monastery and, yeah, can we go there? Are there programs for the public and this and that and so on. So many ways to get people out of this confusion that we're in, the big mess that we're in. You know. The United Nations estimates, you know, very good resource, that every year 1 million people kill themselves. Right. Yeah. How many people here are thinking of killing themselves? You might think about it, but it's like actually doing it. Yeah. And this, of course, doesn't talk about, again, the number of people who are thinking about it. This is more than all the wars in the world combined. All these wars going on we hear about. You know. So political science we need, how to get rid of these wars. But even more than that, we need psychology. How to deal with our own mind, our own satisfaction, our own desire, and so on. So Prabhupada also was doing a book called Dialectical Spiritualism. Have you heard about this? The book about it? Yeah. And he had Shyamasundar and Hayagriva present different Western philosophers and their ideas, summarize them. And they were traveling, and over many months, Prabhupada would make his commentary from our perspective on these different Western philosophies. And people have commented, scholars, that Hayagriva and Shyamasundar, as I understand the situation, weren't accurately really extracting the ideas all that accurately and so on. So not publishing the book much more because it contains these discrepancies. You know. But Prabhupada likes Socrates, right? Socrates. Alfred North Whitehead. You heard of him? Okay. He was the Santana Professor of Philosophy at Harvard University. He was Bertrand Russell, Nobel laureate's guru originally. So he said, very nice person. He said the safest way to characterize all of Western philosophy is to say that the whole thing is a footnote to Socrates. So many things discussed on the immortality of the soul, what is this body, who are we, like that. You see so many arguments that we use, Prabhupada every else. Socrates also deals with them. And Socrates gives credit to ancient sources also, like that. So very, very nice. The Phaedo, it's the very, very last dialogue where the hemlock is there. It's very nice to read, very stimulating, his ideas. You know. So Prabhupada liked Socrates. Then after that, his disciple Plato and his disciple Aristotle, each got a little bit more materialistic as it came down like that. And actually Aristotle became the guru for Western civilization through St. Thomas Aquinas. And we're all following his ideas of chopping everything up and understanding it very analytically, as opposed to try and understand nature by cooperating with it and serving it. You know? So there's a whole history of our thoughts, our ideas, and where we're at and how we look at reality. So Prabhupada liked Socrates. He said he was a good boy, just didn't have a guru like that. He was the last honest man in Western philosophy, and they killed him. Okay, yeah. So after that, there's so many Western philosophies, and Prabhupada was criticizing, no, this, not that, no, that, you know. And it comes down to, for example, to Kant, Immanuel Kant, famous guy. If you look in the Britannic, other places, some people consider him to be the most important philosopher in Western history. And Kant was coming along with the idea that you cannot see the world without starting with certain intellectual tools. I think he called them categories. Like one of them was you have to be able to isolate things. If you know psychology, you just have no intelligence. You just see for example, people at 30 years old, maybe 1930, they had congenital cataracts. And so they're born with light going in, the organs developing, but they never developed, the actual visual perception. They knew everything, glass of water, book, okay. Yeah. So they had surgery, took off the bandages. Well, that's what a book looks like. Well, that's what a person, no. What they saw was a booming, buzzing confusion. They had to learn how to see straight lines. They had to learn how to see circles. They had to learn how to isolate things like that. We don't realize how much subconscious intelligence is there in developing the world we're seeing. It's incredible, incredible. So anyway, then after a while they see squares, they see all these things like that. So Kant was making certain categories that have to be there before you can see the world. For example, you have to be able to isolate things into different groups and so on. Yeah? Okay, so Western philosophy, but Prabhupada also had his criticism of Kant. So finally they're going through all these people, Freud, everything else, and they come to Carl Jung, Carl Gustav Jung. I think he was about 30 years old when Prabhupada was born. So he was born about 1866. And he was born in some small Swiss town up in the mountains with, people singing. What's the word? What's her name? The sound of music with somebody. The hills are alive with the sound of music. It's a nice movie. You have to watch some movie. It's pretty good. Julie Andrews. It's a funny movie. It's a good movie. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So anyway, it was a beautiful place up in the mountains with fresh air and Switzerland. And his father was like a Presbyterian or something, minister and so on. And at that time, if you were crazy, it was just tough luck. If you ever had some psychotic program going on or people haunting you, if your family was rich enough, they would toss you into a more civilized mental hospital. You'd be chained to a bed. They'd throw water on you once a week and put some food in front of you. It was not a good situation. Some places they would kill people. Crazy people, they would just beat them to death or something like that and so on. Crazy people, so on. So it wasn't a good time. But when Jung was growing up, they started to think, well, we've been able to identify diseases and hidden causes. So maybe we can also do the same thing with psychology. There's reasons behind these things. Because previous people, the Greeks and so on, had some idea of the structure of the mind, the structure of the intelligence. You find many, many very ancient paintings where they're describing this analyzing the world, the angels and devils and so on. So it was there, So he entered in as a doctor into psychiatry with Professor Buhler, and Buhler was starting all this. And they developed techniques like free association. I say a word, you say whatever comes into your mind. Money. Youth. Okay, youth. Blue. White. Wife.
Husband.
Oh. We don't do this because sometimes very like a surprising, oops, like that. Wife, filth. I didn't mean she was filthy. I mean she's very clean. I mean, she eliminates filth. Yeah. But by these techniques, you can start to get beyond, the gross mind. Very techniques, scientific techniques. Another one, of course, is the ink blots. These Rorschach ink blots. What do you see? I see spiders. What do you see? I see spiders. What do you see? Because you can project into them. I'm going to count my time here. We're going to go on to tomorrow night, so I get an introduction tonight. So anyway, and there's a very, very good book. It's called, you look on the Amazon or whatever, it's called the Tavistock Lectures, T-A-V-I, Tavistock Lectures. And the Tavistock Foundation is still in London, still organizing very intellectual encounters. So Jung was invited to lecture there for several days, and he talked all about his view of the mind, psychology, analytical psychology. So it's after World War I, before World War II. And he talks, for example, case studies. Okay, so one girl was in the mental hospital, maybe like 25 years old, 26 years old, and very, very, autistic and not talking much to people and stuff. And so he started dealing with her, and she reciprocated enough on the free association tests and stuff to start like dealing with it. And things started coming up again and again. Water, child, this and stuff and so on. So he went on like this and finally started talking to her, asking her questions, and she would be terrified of certain things. He would say, it's okay, I'm your friend, and establishing a personal relationship. So after a long time, it all came out, what had happened. She was a young girl, maybe like in a small town in Switzerland, and she was from a middle-income family, a lower middle-income family. And but she was in love with the rich man's son. It's like an archetypal story. She was in love with the rich man's son, but she thought, I can never, he'll never take any interest in me. I'll never marry him. So some other boy came along and asked her to get married. He was a nice guy, okay, So maybe like about, maybe 2 years later or something, 3 years later, 2 years later, she was at her husband's house, another town, and one of her friends came to visit her. And in that town, one horse had fallen into the reservoir and died and stuff. So people said, don't drink the water in the reservoir for a few days because there's typhoid in it and stuff. So her friend came to her and they're talking, and one little girl was playing, the other baby was in the bathtub, and she was going to bathe her baby. And her friend said, you broke so-and-so's heart, okay, with the rich man's son. Why? He wanted to marry you. Okay. You can imagine if you're a young girl, what this does to your mind. Yeah, he wanted to marry you. Oh God. So, and so she got this news and everything else, and here she's entangled, and her friend leaves. And her little baby is sitting there in the tub and starts sucking on the sponge, right? Now she knows the water has typhoid, and the baby's sucking on the sponge and drinking it, and she just sat and watched, and the baby got typhoid and died. Is this enough to drive you crazy? Yeah, one little more. Yeah, the rich man loved you, you married somebody else, and now after this, you murdered your baby. Okay, is this good cause to go crazy? No? Yes, yes. Well, what's the name? R.D. Laing, very big psychologist. He's also a very good person to read. What's it called? The Politics of Experience, The Voice of Experience. So he said, they actually can't find it, but it fits right into his philosophy. Insanity is usually a sane reaction to an insane situation. Put anybody here in a mental hospital for a few weeks and you'll go nuts, because everybody around you is crazy. And the only sane thing to do is to be crazy. So on. And then psychology developed out of science in North America, maybe also here, but in Spain and South America it developed out of philosophy. So they have the same idea, that there are no crazy people, there are just people in the wrong situation, the wrong social situation. It's our idea too. Sangat sanjayate kama. Our desires and ambitions develop from the company we keep right here. Okay, so anyway, then he started the girl's finally trusting him and bringing out and talking about it, and he's not gonna whatever. And And so finally it came down to the point where she realized, and he was asking her, could you have stopped yourself? And at some point you can't. The emotion's so strong and everything else, you're just paralyzed by it. And she was really thought about it and everything else, and kind of came to the conclusion that maybe she could have done more, she could have done something, but it wasn't all that clear. That maybe she was just in the grip of something which a young girl couldn't handle her whole life and so on, all of her ambitions. And after that, we talked about it, and she made certain commitments about how I'm going to live my life and what I'm going to do. I'm going to take responsibility for what I've done. Ram tells Lakshman, there's no mistake you can make that you can't correct. Right? It's a very, very useful thing to know. You got to pay for it, you got to make the adjustments and stuff, but at a certain point, you rob some money from your friend or something to do something, you know, he doesn't know where it went, maybe $3,000. So after 5 years, you see, I'm the guy who took that money, here's $25,000 back. He says, rob me again. Steal from me again. It's okay, you know, yeah, and I can understand and so on. Yeah. So there's no mistake you can make that you can't correct. So she went ahead and lived her life with this and so on. So this is one of the case studies in the book, the Tavistock Lectures. So on. So anyway, Jung is showing up in Prabhupada's, Dialectical Spiritualism, and they're presenting his philosophy, his ideas, and Prabhupada's saying, well, that is correct. He said, yes, that is also a good idea. That is correct. And, well, that is not correct. Then Shyama-Sundar would explain a little more, and Prabhupada would say, well, from that perspective, yes, it is also correct. So Jung was paid, to go. Somebody else went with him, maybe paid too, to the 50th anniversary of the University of Calcutta. And of course, he's not even English, but the British paid for him to go. And while he was there, he got 5 doctorates and so on, and he's so much experience, contact with, with India, every place else. He was there at the same time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was, the Acharya and present. And many things. He was very, very advanced personality in his consciousness. Prabhupada said, and then Shyama-Sundar said, well, Prabhupada, he's the last one. And Prabhupada said, of all of them, he has the most sense. Okay. So, maya tatam idam sarvam. We're trying to connect everybody, every community. My background, my nature, not your background, not your nature. Everybody's different. Everybody's got to develop their own Sankirtan. Everybody's got to become a guru, right? On Lord Chaitanya's order, and communicate to the people that you can communicate with, your ability. We can all give a general discussion, okay, yeah. But then specifically, myself, some very beautiful young girl comes in the temple room and asks me about Krishna consciousness. I say, well, it's like a very, very beautiful Indian religion and so on. Let me find one of the ladies to talk with you. Like that, okay. So I'm not going to be talking to beautiful young girls about things, The same way I'm going to be talking to handsome men with big mustaches and so on. No, it's like, women can talk to women, children can talk to children. I've seen that. Kids, teenagers and stuff can get the message across to other teenagers a lot better than a 70-year-old guy. Dogs preach to dogs. Have you seen that? I've seen that dogs will get other dogs going along with the Harinam party. Okay, so develop your preaching, your Sankirtan, your service to Prabhupada. Become your little ray of Srila Prabhupada, reaching so many people. So we've been developing this in different programs we've been developing for some time. So, and it's been successful. For example, I tried Vastu for a while, architecture. That was good. I can give like a university level introductory course in Vastu. I've read D.N. Shukla's 2 books and stuff. But then I saw that if I wanted to go on, then I had to become, read more Western archaeology, architecture. Yeah. So back and forth, and finally I'm coming around to my background. I graduated first place in psychology from the University of California in 1970 with minor studies in biology and electrical engineering. Okay, yeah. Then I went on, and stuff, and finally I reached the limit of Western psychology and went into karate and, Okinawan karate and improvisational theater, which is very elevated. And finally came in contact with Prabhupada. Okay, yeah, that's it. So then, started investigating the psychology community and the Jungian psychology. It's practically speaking, the most advanced community of psychologists. Like Prabhupada said, of all that had the most sense. There are people who believe that we are just the product of neurons, right? Yeah. The neurons interact and produce the brain produces the mind produces, personality is combined to produce society produces literature, and the highest product of literature is God. God is the highest product of evolution, right? Yep. Yeah. Karl Marx, when he said religion is the opiate of the people, he wasn't being like critical, because opium at that time was like a useful thing. He said, it's a wonderful thing. Just see what evolution has produced. Evolution has produced God. Wow, evolution, God. Yeah, yeah. So that's what one philosophy of life, very prominent. So the different things were going around. Jung had the fortune of being born in 936 or something, 1865, when these things weren't so locked in. There was still a lot of theology and a lot of flexibility. And from his childhood, because we're not coming into this, he said, nobody comes into this as tabula rasa. Tabula, slate, scratch, rasgar in Spanish. Nobody comes into this as a blank slate. Everybody who deals with babies know right from the beginning, babies are different. Even when you're carrying the baby in your stomach, some are tough, complaining, whatever else. Some are, right from the very beginning you can see there's a personality there. Some are terrified of everything. I knew one, Alexis, or my friend Yashoda Rani's daughter, and she said from the very, very time that she could see anybody with a mustache, she would just freak out and start screaming and crying and everything else like that, so on. And she said by about 6 years old, they go for walks in the market together, and somebody would pass by with a mustache, and she didn't start screaming and crying, but she could feel her holding on to her mother's hand tighter like that. So I mentioned I was using her in lectures and stuff, She's grown up now, everything. She said, yeah, it's a fact. I don't know why, but even still, I don't like guys with mustaches. So some trauma, something we're carrying for many lifetimes. So we come into this. So Jung came into this not believing that gross matter was the cause of all causes. He understood that there is some kind of like integrative seminal force behind this whole world, which is making it work. And he understood religion has certain aspects to it, In our technical philosophy, there's Virat Rup, the universal form. And above that is Hiranyagarbha. And behind that is this golden seminal potent force behind it. And then finally Paramatma, the Holy Spirit, like that, connecting it. And then you come to God as a person. Paramatma is the hand of God. You see these things happening. Lady Luck. Professional gamblers, you talk to professional gamblers, they have a developed sense of ethics and morality and intuition. Maybe a little perverted. Give everybody a free bottle of Cutty Shark. Okay, okay. But they have some intuition. They can actually prove it. They live that way, knowing when it's time to throw the dice and when it's not time to throw the dice and stuff. So this is Paramatma. You see the hand of God or the hand of goddess, or the trotter of Varaha, in everything. Real. So he was on that level from a previous life, and as a child he was growing up in his culture and trying to integrate this stuff and everything else. And he wasn't satisfied taking religion as karma yoga, just the formal rituals, the formal paraphernalia. Christianity means you go to the church on Sunday, drink the wine and the bread, go to the temple, do your pranams, offer incense. No, it's more than just the rituals and the paraphernalia. There has to be some intellectual comprehension there. Your intelligence has to be connected up like that and so on. This is Jnana Yoga. But he was beyond that. He was coming to this level of Dhyana Yoga, of appreciating you have to have techniques of being able to enter into this, enter into the kirtan, enter into the mystery of Jesus Christ in the form of the wine and the bread like that and so on. But his father, he was a pastor, but he didn't have any of this. And so he actually died from frustration because all he could get out of Presbyterian religion or whatever it was just the formalities, and even the intellectual stuff wasn't enough to satisfy him. So he died. And Jung then grew up, in the village with his thing. And he had different mystical experiences right from a very early age. one time, for example, there was a loud explosion in the kitchen, and they all went in looking what it was, and they opened the cabinet up, and one carving knife, Swiss knife, we got good knife here, good steel, had exploded. Right? Ever have that happen in your kitchen? yeah, it blew up, So he took the pieces to the local knife maker and asked him how it would happen, everything else. And the guy said, "Oh, you broke this up, but how did you do it?" Because the guy would have recognized how, some kind of sawing or bending. He said, "How did you do this? I mean, this doesn't happen, It happened, yeah." But there was some mystical stuff at that time. So he was having different intellectual experiences. Formerly, he was getting into psychology and realizing how these things are going on. There is a subtle body, there is a mind, there is intelligence, and they have their own life. Well, maybe they're evolving, but maybe they're not. Maybe there's something coming from above which is actually influencing the formation of the gross body. And but he had nobody to deal with. He walked the same streets that Immanuel Kant walked. If you want to investigate Western philosophy from the perspective of a psychologist, Jung is your Acharya. He investigated all this to tremendous degree. He went back to the Mithra cults in Rome. He studied Kant and everybody else, and he knew Kant, like that sense of this guy walked these streets. Frederick Nietzsche, very famous Western philosopher. He knew people who knew Nietzsche, and so on. So being an Acharya in terms of Western culture, Western philosophy, I know Western history, Western philosophy, Western culture. Then he even was invited to go and travel to the United States, and he was traveling across there, maybe about 1935. I think it was before World War II. And he had a nice conversation with Mountain Lake, one Hopi shaman, like that, nice guy. And a very, very famous dialogue, and they kept on exchanging letters after that. And in that time, letter meant like you write maybe 5-page letter, send it off, it may take maybe 2 months or even 3 months to get to the Hopi Indian guy. He read it and wrote back to you. So actually it was an exchange of essays and so on. So what's happening now in the actual modern community, it's an actual people. You can meet these people. There are a lot of people in Western culture who are on this level of, Virat Rup, introspection, meditation, Nobel laureates we're dealing with and stuff, who appreciate Jung and the Jungian tradition, what's happening, even Nobel laureates, then and now. So what's happening, for example, is that, a lot of Jung's works weren't translated that well. And even, for example, like Mountain Lake, right? His granddaughter may write to the Philemon Foundation, which is taking care of these things, and saying, I was going through my grandfather's stuff, and I was throwing a lot of stuff out, and I found these letters, it looks like, from your Carl Jung, and I was going to throw them away, Do you want them? Yes, don't throw them away. Yeah. So that's what's happening. There's still many things surfacing and stuff. So Jung was keeping a collection of notes on his own personal investigations, experiences. It was a book. Anybody know what the book was called? The Red Book. It was a big, bound thing. And he was an artist too. Some beautiful calligraphy and colored drawings about his experiences from his introspective work. He was afraid of going the same way that Nietzsche went, because Nietzsche was going beyond impersonal categories to personal archetypes. The princess, right? The king, the merchant, the priest, all these things, the dragon. And he was going beyond these impersonal ones to these personal archetypes. Varna ashram dharma, brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha. This is a part of the universal form. Right? It's not spiritual, it's material. Material world includes psychological elements which are very, very permanent, and actually more permanent than your gross body. You get the psychological body, it's going to cause the development of your next body, and so on. So these things he was experiencing and then trying to put them into some kind of systematic fashion and so on. So the Red Book, though, he was actually writing down his experiences with going into these meditative states. And he was afraid of going the same way that Nietzsche went, because Nietzsche went mad. everything went nuts. Because he was afraid of, going the same way, getting lost. So then when he met Freud, oh my God, here's somebody who believes in the same thing, the subconscious and these things. So he finally made an appointment to meet Freud. And Freud canceled all of his appointments for the entire day, and they sat for 6 hours just talking about their experiences and stuff. And Freud was a little older than he was, maybe like 10, 15 years older. And they went on for some time, but then finally at some point Jung realized that Freud really had his limits. He wouldn't accept paranormal phenomena. He wouldn't even come to his own grips with his own sexuality in some ways like that, a little bit obsessed. And then at that point he had to go on, So very famous about their work together and their separation. And then he decided, okay, every day I'll have my practice in the afternoon, every evening I'll be with my family, and in the morning I'll do my introspective work, and that way it kept him grounded. So, but just before he left his body, everybody asked him, so many followers in the whole school developing, please write down your whole biography of your life's journey and what was going on internally and everything else. He said, no way. He said, when I bring out what I'm actually experiencing, all the theologians attack me and all the scientists attack me. I'm only a human being. God, I can't, if I actually told them what I was experiencing, they would all just, crucify me, take out torches and stuff, Said, please, please, please. Okay, so Anna Jaffrey, one of his, female disciples, he then did this autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, like that. It's translated in many languages, and also very easy reading, very good reading. When you read these things as a devotee, you see, wow, it's just like Krishna consciousness. But here's somebody who's experiencing it, and he's adding in more details, and this level is important for me. Okay, that's good, And you can connect it. Maya tatamidam sarvam. And then beyond that, you say you can, it's also good for our own psychology, for your own psychological development, because we have problems, Maybe you were in love with a rich man's daughter. So, we have these problems and stuff. And so reading his books and stuff does help. He has a way. So it's kind of a summary. So then the Shonirsham Darshani was a professor of the history of medicine at the University of London, very much attracted to Jung, a very excellent historian, excellent guy. So they gave him the responsibility then of actually now finally translating the Red Book. Because Jung said, my biography, I'll do it, but it's not going to be published until after I'm dead. So same way, years later, they're finally coming to this position where they're accepting that, okay, Jung probably was not psychotic. He was just describing the things the way they are. And we can get a lot of benefit from that. So the Red Book came out a few years ago. And the Philemon Foundation is the one who's actually taking these letters and reconstructing so many things. So it's a very active organization. There are Jungian psychologists, different journals and periodicals. And so we're doing lecturing all over the world in this area, which is science, psyche, and spirituality. The encounter of Carl Gustav Jung with the mysticism of ancient India, the Bhagavata, like that. And again, Umberto Maturana, his Nobel laureates, all candidates, all coming. Because they know Jung. Yeah, this is great. And us connecting it to India, wow. And they're satisfied. So we've been developing, I'll kind of stop here. We've been developing a series of lectures. This gradually is growing. It's growing. Even the dog can take part. So over years and years, we've been developing this area. There's anybody interested in this area. So we did, and Peru is very, very good because Peru has enough ghosts and psychological stuff, and it's also close enough to America that you can really talk about science and spirituality very well. So we did a program with the National Library last year on psychology and the sacred, and it was international scholars, everything else, big people coming, and people standing 2 hours in line to get into the auditorium and stuff, one of the best auditoriums there. So then they wanted us to do it again, but this year, but I was going to skip it because 2018 we wanted to do a big program, and it takes a lot of work to organize these. They kept pushing us, so we did it again, and was the poster then for Peru, psychology and the sacred. the National Library is right out one of the main thoroughfares, 4-lane highway and stuff. And they had a 40-foot tall, banner out there advertising and so on. And again, people coming, a lot of other groups coming together now. Jesuits, Sufi, nice people. We have so many areas where we can work together, and we're starting to appreciate that and so on. And then we went to Chile. Down in Chile, we actually did, specifically Jung, best cultural center in Santiago, Jung in psychology. Yep. Another area we did, actually, I did this so many times I was kind of bored of it, but they wanted us to do it again. This is Hamlet and Arjuna. And it's not superficial. Two greatest works in the two worlds. Why are they so great? And so many deep things about philosophical perspectives. So again, it was the National Library, beautiful hall with marbles and oak wood and packed full. Head of the best television channel in the country, And we were co-presenting with Raul Zorita, who's the National Poet Laureate, about 80 years old, When he was looking at me, I felt like anything I could do would probably occupy about 30% of his intelligence. This guy was deep, intelligent guy. And he had translated Hamlet into Spanish. And he said, I just want to hear, I met Hanuman Swami before, it's very interesting, the Mahabharata, it's very interesting. I just want to come and listen. No, please participate. It's a beautiful cultural program, right? Music, kirtan, kirtan lecture, kirtan prasad. That's the formula. Kirtan lecture, kirtan prasad. Music, very beautiful cultural program, high class. I gave my presentation on Hamlet and Arjuna, and then Raul gave some commentaries on it. Then he read some selected things like that. I looked at the audience, and they were just like, Hamlet's potent. Probably said you can teach Shakespeare in the Gurukula. There's a big discussion about remarriage. Is it okay to get remarried? Is divorce okay? Yeah. If your husband dies, right? Take sannyas. Is it okay to get remarried? Did Vishnu Priya get remarried? And Lord Chaitanya took sannyas? No, she was first class. 1 grain of rice for each Maha Mantra. Like that. She was just as good a sannyasi as he was. Like that and so on. The glories of the holy name. But Parasara says, yes, following your departed Lord in the same fire of sacrifice, okay. Take sati or become a civil widow and okay. First class. Second class, still progressive in Kali Yuga, is enjoy life but don't get remarried. Wear nice clothes, everything else. Third class is that after 6 years, get remarried. I have personal experiences of this, So Hamlet is a lot about this whole thing about remarriage. His uncle murdered his father, and the ghost tells him this, and he has to murder his uncle to get revenge. And he has to chastise his mother in no uncertain terms because she got remarried, to her brother-in-law right after her husband was dead. His friend Horatio shows up and he says, oh, why have you come? I've come to see the funeral of your father. Funeral of your father. And he says, don't say you've come to see the funeral of my father. Say you've come to see the marriage of my mother. Marriage of my mother. And Horatio says, well, one did follow the other pretty quickly. Hamlet says, no, we should be thrifty. The cooked meats from the funeral feast did but do double duty as cold cuts at the wedding feast. Yep. Guy's body wasn't even cold in the grave. Yeah. So in the play, the drama, the queen is protesting, the other queen's protesting, I'll never get married again. And she says, they say a woman who kisses a second man in bed kills the first one twice. This is heavy, very, very potent, And we can match it with Veda Vyas and stuff. And so again, it was very popular. Afterwards, people buy Bhagavad Gitas like anything, and so on. So it's the kind of programs we've been doing, this cultural program. This is my nature. I've been developing this for a long time. Anybody here can probably develop their preaching much faster than I can, and so on. And I'm going to finish now. So from this side, from our organization, cultural organization, we've been developing, Hamlet and Arjuna, Light of the Bhagavat. It's also a very, very good tool. Prabhupada designed it. And psychology and the sacred. And now we're going ahead with art and the sacred. We're trying to develop that for 2018. We're actually applying for, and we have a good chance of getting a $125,000 budget to make a movie on art and the sacred, Pilgrim's Progress. And we're working with very responsible people, directors of the Indian Fine Arts Academy, and people like that now. They're interested. And it's, again, how to relate to them. The Bhagavatam tells you. You can relate to dogs, you can relate to karmis, but you can also relate to jnanis, and also relate then to these dhyanis who have their techniques and stuff, and even our religious people, so on. And so we have Bhagavatam allows us to communicate with so many people, you know? And the more we can communicate with these, you know, higher class, more realized people, the more bigger our army of intelligent people is. If we can connect up with the Jesuits, you get an incredible number of Catholic people who, you know, Hare Krishnas are okay, you know. When it comes down to stopping abortion, right? Chanika, was it? Parasara gives different atonements for different sins. Do this, do that, do this. He says for that girl who unnecessarily aborts her own embryo, no atonement is possible. Because no way you can do anything to, you know, like expiate for this. You know, you have to suffer, you know. So he gives, you know, it's a very bad thing, you know, so on. But now it's becoming legalized. You know. So we start to find other people we can talk to, communicate, and there are details. We disagree with some. We disagree with the Bālama Sampradaya. They say that the ultimate God is Krishna, but the greatest devotee is, well, the Yashoda. Okay, Radha, Yashoda, Radha, Yashoda. Yeah. So there are many details, you know. And the other thing we're doing is we're working with the Ministry of Education. This is a book we published along with the symposium in South America, Solaris. You know. So we're working with the Ministry of Education and, you know, developing different things with them, Bhakti Shastri, primary schools, university programs, like that, so many things. So we're starting a magazine called Viplava, Revolution, a quarterly thing. And the first issue came out, and so anybody interested also in these educational programs, preschool, primary school, university education, because there are different franchises. I think even here somewhere here in Australia, somebody's doing Goloka education. And we're trying to connect all this. About 125,000 school-age kids in ISKCON right now, and we haven't even got our own school system. You know, Montessori, what's the other one? Steiner, yeah, all these things are there. So it's kind of what we're doing, and tomorrow night we can maybe go on a little bit more about, you know, Carl Jung and the Bhagavata and these areas of preaching like that and so on. And basically we're just trying to like inspire people. Well, that's not my thing, but yeah, I can see, okay, if you develop that, I can develop food for life. Yeah, that or somebody else. There's so many different areas. I used to work with the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Yeah, and it's preaching to scientists. And this is the most dry, you know. One time we had a big program with Nobel laureates, and one of the topics was consciousness one of the elements of the array of the state vector at the origin of the universe? Okay, that's how you speak their language. Yeah. So many different groups and communities like that. So we can stop here. Any kind of final questions or comments? It's 6 o'clock, right? Yeah.
I was just wondering that Śrīmad Prabhupada said that there are 8,400,000 species of life. I was just wondering where the microscopic living entities fit in
Yeah.
microscopic creatures, where they fit into the...
We're broadcasting. The question is, Prabhupada says that the Vedas, Vedic literature, the Puranas, say there's 8,400,000 species of life, and he's wondering where the microbes and the bacteria fit in. There are little Prabhupada calls worms, you know, bacteria, but actually what they are is they're tubular-shaped, motile living entities. That's a worm, you know. And they go on your skin. They drink out of your sweat glands, and they eat the rotting flesh. Make you feel good about it. They're all over our skin. Take a nice shower, you kill a lot of them off, but they reproduce like anything. You know? We've all been there, you know, having a good drink of the salty water, you know. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly, but that's where it comes in, that there are, like, it talks about aquatics and things like that, you know. So I'm not sure the worms are mentioned and so on. So bacteria and small worms, big worms and small worms, yeah. So I'm not sure exactly where it fits in like that and stuff. But they're conscious of these things, conscious of them. Yeah.
We heard something for the first time that you said Krishna said, all is within me, but he is not within them.
Yeah.
Now, this might be your visit, but every week we're told that Krishna is in all men.
Yeah.
So we've suddenly got a contradictory statement.
This is not me, it's the Bhagavad Gita. In the purport, Prabhupada gives the example that the king has a ministry of health, ministry of education, ministry of prisons, ministry of defense. So he's not like physically present in every ministry, but by his influence, he's present everywhere. So Krishna is present in everybody through his expansion of the Paramatma feature. An example is given just like you look at many different pots of water, and you'll see the same sun is there. But the sun is in the sky, and these are representations. So Krishna is saying in his personal form with Radha in Goloka, he's not present everywhere. But it's just like, for example, if I take a pair of tweezers and pull on Prabhuji's one hair on his skin, right? He's going to notice that. So every blade of grass, Krishna is the same way conscious of it. He's so big. So
Sorry, I'm getting a contradiction there.
Yeah.
1 minute you say he's not there, and then the next line you say he is there.
No, I
Give
said
me clarity on how is he not there.
He's not there, as I said, in his personal form like that, as Radha and Krishna.
No one said he was.
Yeah.
We understand that he's
Okay.
small. If he's in a mouse, he's not 6
Yeah.
foot tall.
Yeah, yeah.
It's squeezed in.
But it's not
We
even
understand all that.
it's not even with the same form as Radha and Krishna.
Not far off.
Well, no, he's there with his.
Krishna as a deity is pretty, looks pretty well identical to what you got up on the stage there.
Yeah, but
If
Krishna in his
you
Paramatma feature.
meditate,
Wait a second, please wait a
going
second.
everything
Wait a
is there.
second. Krishna in his Paramatma feature is present with 4 arms, and he doesn't have Radha with him. That's what we're saying. Yeah. Just like the king is present in different ministries through his expansions, his energies, his representatives, but not in his personal physical form. Yeah.
So that was what you meant by the statement.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
he's not there,
Yeah.
not there
He's not there in.
personal form,
Yeah.
but he's there in influence.
He's there through his Paramatma, through his expansion, through his energy.
He's all pervading
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah.
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 Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, okay.
Can we say
One,
that Paramatma
2.
is Krishna? I mean, Krishna is within me and within you, but we know him as Paramatma, but it's still that potent, wonderful energy. Except it's not me.
Brahma Samhita says, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshi Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaramachinta Guna Sarupam. So again, I could take my danda here and start beating on Prabhuji's head, and he would say, "Why are you beating me?" And I would say, "I am not beating you. My cane is beating you." Yeah. So Krishna expands himself as his Paramatma, which doesn't have Ananda. You can't have a relationship with Ananda with a Paramatma, only Sat and Chit. But a devotee, he sees who's beating him. He sees, oh, this is the hand of Krishna, and I can kiss it, and I can do things to it, So it's quite difficult for devotees to understand the Paramatma because, we see how Krishna did that. Somebody else, a gambler, he may see Lady Luck. I have that feeling again that if I put all my money on the next roll of the dice, I can't hold anything back, then Lady Luck's going to do it. And yep, again, it's there, that feeling. Yeah. Prabhupada says the Paramatma is form direction from the Super Soul. It's intelligence, perspective. There's a hand of God is in things, but is it a woman? Is it a man? Is it a pig? Is it, it's a big beard? So waking up. But a devotee sees, it's Krishna. Yeah. So there.
And I want to know, how do you differentiate between your real nature and nature because of your previous impressions? So how do we know what's our real nature and not because of the previous impression of last time?
Okay. One thing is that we have this kind of attitude, how do I do this? We're like 3-year-old kids. We need someone to show us. We're always dependent energy. We do it by Krishna's help. in so many circumstances. Even in this spiritual world, we're still functioning under Radharani's, Shakti. Basically Durga or Radha, take your choice. So even in the spiritual world, we're doing things from our nature, and it's integrated with Krishna, which shows the real reality of our nature through, these transparent via medium, right? So it has to be, we don't actually distinguish it all by ourselves. Krishna's helping you, and the different stages but we're doing something too. It's like kids can cooperate, they can grow up. The first level is Anamaya, which is very interesting because you take Carl Jung, he gave a series of lectures on the Kundalini, and you can just match it up, the chakras and stuff with, Anamaya. We're all born in this stage where we're just eating is everything. The baby just wants to eat, and the whole world is like edible, So he's identifying with everything. About 2 years old, the terrible twos, you start to realize that you aren't this world, you are this body, right? I am this body. That's a big step up from thinking you are the universe. And it happens in animals too. And then, if you try and cut the kids' hair, it's like World War III. They watch their fecal matter go down the toilet, and stuff. They fight with their possessions. Many things in this world where you're starting to distinguish yourself from your clothes, and stuff, and distinguish your body. And so it happens naturally by God's arrangement if you're willing to participate in this whole thing. Next level is this Anamaya, Pranamaya, Manamaya. And this is where we tell people something like, well, a little Hindu boy can do that, but not a little Muslim boy. Or a girl, or a boy can do that, but not a girl. So you start to develop this thing, I'm a girl, I'm a man, I'm Hindu, I'm Muslim, I'm Japanese, this is all monodharma. And it's very extensive, very developed. Most people don't get beyond this, of identifying with a certain society, certain community, certain species and stuff, And it's there. Confucius is giving advice, and Confucius says, if you're going for revenge, better to dig 2 graves first. Yeah, so we're starting to come wisdom and things like that, and social behavior, and how we act, and all these kind of things. And we're cooperating with all these authorities that Krishna gives. Krishna's sent all over the world so many people, he's inspired them with knowledge, and we can follow them and apply it. Then, next level, Manomaya is Jnanamaya. Then you get to Confucius, Socrates, and all these wise people who are starting to say that the animals eat, the animals sleep, and what's the difference, and the sun rises, and you start to come to this level of seeing the universality and Brahman and things like that and so on. Like that. And again, there's processes and people and different religions and so on. Then finally, Anandamaya is where we had the possibility of actually Satchit Ananda, of having a personal relation with Krishna. You can't do it with Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, you can't do it with Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. The first level where it can actually happen is with Mahavishnu. Kshirodakshaya Vishnu and Garbhodakshaya Vishnu are expansions of Mahavishnu. They don't exist when there's no material world. Mahavishnu is the first one of God is great. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's like Darshanartik, Shingartik, which never stops. It just keeps on going on forever, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. God is great. He's great. He's really great. This is Shantaras, but it's, some people like that. So, and then again, there's different levels. There's different religions, different processes. And so in our culture, basically if you come to a certain level, then you realize you accept Prabhupada as an Acharya, he can guide me, I accept him. And he tells you, chant this mantra, chant it on beads 16 times a day with enthusiasm, 16 rounds a day, and follow 4 principles strictly. And that's all you have to do. But to chant enthusiastically, you got to be up in the morning early. You can't be like have 2 rounds done before you go to work. Try and chant enthusiastic rounds. You're on the phone like, yeah. So you begin to realize other things are essential. And Prabhupada gives a hierarchy, Get up early, chant your rounds, read the Bhagavatam, join the Sankirtan movement. Yeah. And so we have our religion in process. And at a certain point, you realize there is an absolute truth. You become a Brahmin, second initiation. And at that point, you realize that all these non-eternal things are not myself. This is not, obviously not myself. It's not eternal. So you begin to look for that aspect of yourself which is pretty pervasive and going on all the time. Okay, you start to really find it in yourself. The next level is Paramatma. You become a Goswami, Goswamini, and you actually can distinguish. It has form and stuff, and you start to find yourself in terms of your transcendental qualities and abilities like that and stuff. And these are abilities that, my musical abilities are something I can tell which is very deep in my character. And even if I die, I'm going to be attracted to music and so on. Yeah? And then finally, pure devotee, then we have to go to bhava. At bhava, before prema, you can actually distinguish yourself, from eternal self. I am a mango. I am a cow. My name is Clarabelle. But you're just not, you're not fully awake. And when bhava manifests as prema, and prema we know. Totally. But by bhava, you're already distinguishing yourself. Okay? Yeah.
Just wanted to get some tips about
Stop.
chanting.
Yeah.
Like I've seen you chanting. I think you meditate on something with the picture in the morning.
Yeah.
What is the precedent? What are the tips for good chanting?
Huh?
For good chanting, what are the tips for good chanting?
Wow. What are the tips for good chanting for you?
I want
Now
to.
ask me, because everybody's different.
Yeah.
And Prabhu, what is a good diet? Okay, yeah, it's like that. It's just different. How can I honor prasadam, Prabhu? I'm 70% pitta, fire element, And so I have no gravity. I just like, ever see a fire with gravity? No, it's just my nature. I realize it, okay, it's just before fighting, yeah. So everybody's different. Chanting is different. But one tip, somebody asked me like about 7 years ago, what is the essence of all this Krishna consciousness? And I was thinking about it, and I came up with 7 words. Get up early and get your rounds done. Yep. Yeah, you got to beat it into your brains and stuff. And everything else after that is just easy. 16 enthusiastic rounds first off, and your intelligence is sharp, you're focusing, your mind's like a muscle. You got to work it, you got to train it, and it's used to working nicely. So that's one of the main things. It's always better to be up early in the morning, engaging in kirtan, engaging in nice bhajan, sangsara davanala lodalika, whatever, know what the words mean, and then chant your japa, read Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, and you're ready, for your day and stuff like that. So beyond that, some people are 95% Shudra, so they have to walk when they chant. Other people, they cannot focus when they're walking. Yeah? Somebody else is on and on like that. Sometimes I can't control my mind. My mind's running all over the place. So what I do is I stop breathing. Right? Then my mind says, we're not breathing. I say, yeah, I know. I'm not going to breathe until you focus on the mantra. I don't want to do it. I want to think about this. Nope, I'm not going to breathe. Yeah. So there are many techniques, but the main thing is the desire to do it. Okay. So I think 6 o'clock we're supposed to have finished here and stuff. I want to thank everybody. And if anybody has any questions afterwards, we can talk about it individually. But now there is prasad, right? Haribol! So we'll be, giving class tomorrow morning and tomorrow night. And tomorrow's Ekadasi?
Yes.
Okay, tomorrow morning and tomorrow night, and then Wednesday we'll be going to...
Tuesday, Brisbane.
Oh, Tuesday. Tuesday we'll be going to Brisbane. How do you say it?
Brisbane.
Brisbane.
Yeah.
Brisbane. Yeah. All right, mate. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, mate. Back home, back to that. So Prabhupada ki. Huh?
This is my brother.
I figured it out.